The snowfield incident. The wind howled across the tundra, a sound that could have been mistaken for wolves if there had been any left on this frozen world. Snow whipped sideways, stinging exposed skin, but the Morozov children didn't care. Kirill and Anya, bundled in their red winter coats, laughed as they chased each other through drifts taller than they were. Beyond them, the black line of the forest stood still and silent, watching as forests sometimes do. From above, a shadow passed over the snow. At first, it was just a darker blur against the clouds, but then came the hum, deep, mechanical, alien. The laughter of the children faltered. They turned, squinting through the flurries as the shape descended. It was not one of the colony's shuttles. The vessel was sleek, triangular, and matte black, its hull etched with gold insignia. Blue thrusters hissed against the snow as it landed not far from the children. The Empire's sigil burned like a brand along its side. The boarding ramp extended with a hiss of hydraulics. Out stepped soldiers clad in obsidian armor that reflected no light. Their visors glowed faintly, obscuring whatever eyes lay beneath. Plasma rifles hummed in their gauntlet hands. Kirill took a step back, tugging Anya's mitten. "Don't look at them," he whispered, as if that could make them invisible. The lead soldier's voice was cold, amplified through his helmet. Colonial progeny detected. Unregistered settlement confirmed. Orders are to cleanse. Cleanse. Anya didn't understand the word, but Kirill did. He shoved her behind him. "Our mama's coming," he said, his voice shaking but defiant. The soldier tilted his head. Not soon enough. The first shot didn't kill instantly. Stunned pulses dropped the children to their knees, writhing in the snow, their cries muffled by the wind. Then came the final bursts, two clean, precise flashes. The snow around them bloomed red. The soldiers stepped over their bodies without pause, their boots crunching in the frost. "Move on," the leader ordered. "Burn the rest of the village after securing it." They vanished into the white haze, leaving only their footprints and the cooling corpses of two children in bright red coats. Yelena Morozova saw the smoke before she saw the bodies. She had been hunting, nothing more than a simple trip to bring back meat before the next storm closed in. Her long black coat was dusted with snow, a bough slung over one shoulder, a skinning knife on her belt. The trail of boot prints caught her eye first. They were not the prints of colonists, too heavy, too uniform. Military. Her pulse quickened. She crested a small rise and froze. Kirill lay sprawled on his back, eyes half open to the sky that would never see him grow. Anya's braids were dusted with snow, her face pale, lips faintly blue. Both wore their coats. Both were still. The bough slid from Yelena's shoulder into the snow without a sound. She dropped to her knees between them, her hands shaking as she touched their faces, brushing away the frost that clung to their lashes. "Deki, my little ones." Her breath came ragged, condensing in sharp clouds before her face. She expected tears, she wanted them, but none came. The grief was there, deep and raw, but something colder was rising beneath it. She tilted her head back and screamed. It was not a human sound. It tore out of her throat like a wounded animal and rolled across the frozen plain. The storm seemed to pause, the wind circling tighter around her. Snowflakes hung in the air for a fraction too long before continuing their fall. Somewhere, deep in the forest, branches cracked, not from the storm, but as if something was waking. Yelena lowered her head slowly. Her hair whipped in the wind, black strands across a face that was no longer just a mother's. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small iron pendant, its shape strange, neither cross nor star. She pressed it to her lips and whispered words in a language the galaxy had forgotten. The pendant grew warm. The air shifted. In the distance, the black shapes of the Imperial soldiers moved toward the village, unaware of the thing that had just opened its eyes. Yelena rose, her movements slow, deliberate. She didn't look at her children again, not because she didn't love them, but because she would see them every time she closed her eyes from now until the stars went out. The hunt had begun. The snow swallowed her figure as she walked toward the forest, leaving no footprints. Behind her, the storm grew teeth. The mother's true nature. The forest was not like other forests. The colonists said it was cursed, trees that grew in unnatural patterns, animal bones found arranged in spirals beneath the snow, shadows that moved against the wind. Children were warned not to go in too deep. Yelena Morozova had built her home at its edge for that very reason. It kept strangers out. Tonight, the forest welcomed her. She stepped between the birch trunks, and the wind seemed to still. The temperature dropped further, not from the storm but from something older. The moonlight filtered through the branches in narrow, silver shafts, guiding her deeper. Her breath came slow, steady. She knew the path. Half a kilometer in, she stopped before a rise of frost-crusted earth. It looked like nothing, just a mound overgrown with roots and snow. But Yelena knelt, brushing aside the white powder to reveal dark, carved wood. Her fingers traced the patterns, circles within circles, hooked lines curling inward. Symbols older than the Empire, older than most human nations had ever been. She pressed her palm against the wood and whispered. The mound shuddered. Roots groaned as if waking from a long sleep, pulling back to reveal a dark opening beneath. The air that rushed out was warm and carried the scent of ash and herbs. Inside was her past. The hut was small but impossibly deep, its walls lined with shelves of jars, dried herbs, bones, and tools of iron and silver. A stove in the center glowed with a steady orange light. It had burned for centuries without wood or fuel. Yelena hung her coat on a peg. For a long moment, she just stood there, staring at the familiar space she had sworn never to enter again. Once, she had been feared from the Baltic to the Urals. In whispered stories, she was Baba Yaga, the witch in the chicken-legged hut, the woman of the deep woods who traded in secrets and blood. Villagers left offerings at the forest's edge to keep her away. Soldiers marched into the woods to kill her and never returned. But that was a lifetime ago. Several, in fact. She had buried that life beneath snow and silence, traded it for the warmth of children's laughter. And the Empire had just burned it away. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she took down charms and tools. Iron nails, wolf teeth, a rusted mortar and pestle. She crushed frost-covered herbs into powder, the scent sharp enough to sting the eyes. She tied bones with red thread, muttering in the old tongue, words that curled and warped in the air like smoke. The shadows in the hut leaned closer. On the far wall hung her other coat, black, heavy, stitched with sigils in silver thread. She shrugged it on, feeling its weight settle across her shoulders. The belt clasped itself without her touch. She pulled her hair back, tying it with a strip of wolf hide. When she looked into the warped mirror above the stove, her reflection was not entirely her own. The cheekbones sharper, the eyes glowing faintly, the faint suggestion of iron teeth when her lips parted. The forest outside shifted. She stepped out of the hut, and it followed her. The structure rose on long, skeletal legs of twisted wood and bone, its roof creaking as it adjusted to the snow-laden air. It would not yet walk, but it would move when she called. Her voice was low, cold. "I will not strike blindly," she told the storm. "I will see the one who gave the order. I will take their name from their mouth before I take their breath." A whisper ran through the branches, a language not spoken by human tongues. The storm seemed to listen. The first step was finding the patrol that killed her children. She would need their commander alive, long enough to tell her everything. Then she would burn him to nothing. She closed her eyes. In the dark behind her eyelids, she felt them. 10 heat signatures moving toward the garrison, weapons hot, armor power packs glowing like tiny suns. She could feel the hum of their ship's engine as it idled nearby. Her lips curled into something between a smile and a snarl. "Found you." The hut's stove flickered, and a thin column of smoke rose into the blizzard. It twisted unnaturally, coiling in the air before breaking apart into a flock of black crows that took to the wind, each one an extension of her sight. The snow under her boots didn't crunch. It gave way silently. She moved through the trees like a shadow, the forest parting for her steps. Every living thing in it bent away, not in fear but in deference. Somewhere far above, in the cold reaches of orbit, the Empire thought itself untouchable. They had no idea that a thing older than their star fleet had stirred. The grand strategist would learn soon enough. And by the time he did, the name Baba Yaga would no longer be a quaint Earth myth. It would be a warning. The hunt. The patrol garrison sat on the edge of a frozen plateau, its steel walls jutting from the snow like jagged teeth. Floodlights stabbed through the storm, illuminating landing pads and automated turrets. Inside, the soldiers who had murdered Kirill and Anya were warming themselves, helmets off, laughter loud. They didn't hear the wind change. The blizzard outside slowed, not stopped, but muted, as if sound itself had been smothered. The floodlights flickered once, twice, then dimmed to a weak glow. Private Loras glanced at the nearest viewport and frowned. Anyone else seeing that? Before anyone could answer, the first scream came from the West Watchtower. A sharp, brief cry, and then silence. Sergeant Vale pushed up from the table. Stay sharp. Could be colonist raiders. Colonists didn't make the wind shift like that. Yelena moved through the storm without leaving a mark. The soldiers' heat signatures pulsed bright in her mind. 10 in total, scattered between towers, gatehouse, and barracks. She would take the outer guards first, so the inner ones would know fear before she came for them. A lone sentry stood on the wall, scanning the snow with thermal goggles. He never saw the shape behind him until it was too late. A pale face in the swirling white, eyes faintly aglow. Something cold and sharp hooked around his throat, and then he was gone, dragged backward into the dark without a sound. Below, another soldier adjusted his rifle. He caught a flicker of movement in the snow, a shadow that didn't match the light. He raised his weapon, but the ground beneath him split open into a maw of frost-coated roots. They closed around him, and the snow settled back as if he'd never been there. Yelena let the survivors hear just enough. A metal door slammed somewhere in the garrison, echoing in the storm. One of the floodlights shattered, glass scattering like ice. A figure, tall, cloaked, hair black against the snow, appeared in the beam of the next light for only a second before vanishing again. By the time Sergeant Vale rallied his men for a missing. "Thermals up, weapons hot," he barked. "Whatever's out there, we'll—" The barracks door burst inward, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees in a heartbeat. Frost raced up the walls and across the floor. The stove in the corner went out with a hiss, and their breath fogged instantly. She was inside. Yelena stepped into the weak light, her black coat dusted with snow, silver thread sigils glinting faintly. Her eyes locked on Vale. "You," she said in a voice like frozen iron. "We're there." Vale raised his rifle. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm the one who will take your name." The rifle bucked in his hands as he fired, but the rounds hit nothing. Her shadow split in two, moving along the walls like ink in water. The lights died completely, replaced by a dim orange glow from nowhere. Vale felt heat at his back and turned. There was a stove where the wall had been, its iron mouth yawning wide, fire burning with an unnatural hunger. He didn't have time to scream before it pulled him in. The last surviving soldier, Corporal Dren, was found outside in the snow at dawn, eyes wide, skin pale, lips moving soundlessly. When the medics finally got him to speak, his words were broken, fevered. "She walks in the storm. The hut has legs. She's coming for the ship for the Admiral." Imperial Command dismissed his story as shock-induced hallucination. But they sent the recording to Admiral Karov anyway. Karov listened in silence. The image of the black-coated woman, as described by Dren, was unsettlingly specific. An old memory stirred, a childhood story told on Earth, about a witch in the woods who took the unwary. Nonsense, he told himself. Myths don't kill trained soldiers. Still, he ordered an elite strike team to the planet. They were equipped with thermal tracking drones, anti-psi projectors, and weaponized heat cannons designed to counter energy vampires and cold-dwelling predators. The strike team landed at night. They advanced in formation through the storm, scanning every drift and shadow. Half a click from the garrison ruins, the snow grew deeper, too deep. One man sank to his waist. Swearing into his calm, the others moved to help him, but the snow around them shifted. It wasn't snow. It was bone. thousands of frost-white bones, packed together and buried beneath the ice. The wind rose, and through it came a whisper in a language none of them knew. The drone's feeds glitched, their visuals splitting into static. When they came back online, they showed the same image from every angle. A woman in a black coat standing 30 meters ahead, hair whipping in the wind, eyes glowing faintly. She smiled. The storm swallowed the strike team whole. Hours later, the blizzard broke, and the plateau was empty. Only their weapons remained, half buried in the snow. From a ridge overlooking the empty battlefield, Yelena watched the horizon. She now had what she needed. The strike team leader's memories, pulled from his mind as easily as plucking a thread from cloth. The one who gave the order, the one in orbit, the grand strategist. Her lips curved in satisfaction. The hunt was no longer bound to the snowfields. Now it would climb to the stars. The dreadnought's fall. The iron will drifted above the colony world like a black, faceless god. 3 kilometers of armored hull, bristling with railguns and plasma lances. It was the Empire's pride, untouchable, invincible. From her vantage point in the storm below, Yelena Morozova whispered to the wind. The hut came to her first, its skeletal legs unfolding from the snow with a groan of ancient timber. Birch branches scraped the air as it bent low, opening its door to her. Inside, the stove burned hotter than she had ever seen, the flames white-blue and hungry. She stepped inside, fastening the black coat tight. The hut rose higher, legs stabbing into the ice, each step impossibly long. It climbed, not toward the hills, but toward the sky itself. The blizzard followed, spiraling upward in a column of white. The air thinned, frost blooming across her skin, but never biting. With a shuddering lurch, the hut breached the upper atmosphere. The stars spread out in cold silence, and before them loomed the iron will. The hut's legs folded inward, reshaping into jagged limbs that clung to the dreadnought's hull. Frost spread from their points of contact, crawling over the metal like a living thing. No alarms triggered. No siren screamed. She was inside before the ship even realized she had breached it. The Iron Will's crew carried out their routines unaware. One by one, the lights above their heads flickered. The temperature dropped, slightly at first, then sharply enough to cloud their breath. A faint smell of burning herbs crept through the ventilation system. In the mess hall, a glass shattered on the floor. A young ensign bent to pick it up, then froze as the sound of footsteps echoed behind him. He turned. No one was there. In the command hall, Grand Strategist Valric studied tactical readouts. "Report from the strike team?" he asked without looking up. "I haven't checked in, sir," said the comm officer, his voice tight. Valric's eyes narrowed. "Put the ship on alert. Something is." The door slammed shut with a sound like bones snapping. The lights went out. Only the main view screen remained, its glow pale against the faces of the bridge crew. And then she was there. Yelena stepped into the glow, her coat trailing frost across the deck, her eyes burning faintly in the dark. Her voice carried without volume, curling around their minds. "You kill my children." The crew scrambled for weapons, but their rifles jammed in their hands, mechanisms crusted with sudden ice. The temperature dropped further, breath came in ragged clouds, and skin began to pale. Valric's jaw tightened. "You're no soldier. You're something else. I'm what your ancestors feared when the night was long and the woods were deep," Yelena said. "I am the last voice of the lost ones here. I am Baba Yaga." He tried to meet her gaze, but felt it pulling at him, unraveling the threads of thought. Memories spilled, battle orders given, civilians burned, her children's small bodies in the snow. She drank in every detail, storing it like a hunter memorizing prey. The stove appeared at the center of the bridge, though none had seen it arrive. Its door swung open, heat spilling out in a strange, hungry glow. "Judgment," she said simply. Valric's voice cracked. "Wait." The fire took him, drawing him inside as if gravity itself bent toward that single point. His scream echoed down the corridors, through the comms, into the hearts of every crew member. One by one, they followed, not by her hands, but as if the ship itself decided it was time to feed her wrath. Hours later, the Iron Wolf floated silent. Sensors on nearby ships detected no life signs, only faint energy readings from deep within the hull. A boarding party from a neighboring cruiser ventured inside. They found the corridors encased in frost, railguns ice solid, viewports etched with strange looping patterns. No bodies, only a faint trail of black feathers scattered across the floors. In the command hall, the captain's chair sat empty, a thin curl of smoke drifting from where the stove had stood. The party's leader turned to speak, but the lights flickered. In the reflection of the viewport, for just an instant, a tall woman in a black coat stood behind him, eyes glowing faintly. When he turned, she was gone. They left the ship without taking anything. Back on the colony world, Yelena sat before the hut's stove, the warmth wrapping around her like an old cloak. Outside, the graves of Kirill and Anya lay beneath fresh snow, marked by birch branches bound in iron wire. She laid 2 carved wooden dolls on the mounds, 1 boy, 1 girl. The Empire would return. She knew that. Empires always returned. But next time, they would not come laughing. They would come whispering her name, and that name would taste like fear.